Welcome back. I'm Alfred Lamont Weber, and today we're with a really extraordinary guest, um, classical guitarist John Martin. Martin is also a famous guitar name in the guitar field, but you can tell us a bit about that.
I got a couple of those myself.
Who has contacted us from Atlanta, Georgia, with a number of very interesting connections that we'll be exploring during this conversation, which will be a multi-dimensional conversation, I'm sure. Welcome, John.
Thank you. Pleasure being here.
Well, you really spoke about a number of things during our first contact, and the first being that you have noticed and developed an amazing connection between your music and interdimensional contact. And I wondered if you could share, share some of your background.
Sure. I've been playing guitar probably 40 plus years. In Europe. I love music very much, and it takes me to a very serene place in my mind, and I try to draw on that to kind of feel what the universe says in response. And I've had some really amazing events that have taken place because of that.
Right. And so you said that you recently had been, because of your exploration and your interest in multidimensional phenomena, in particular UFOs and interdimensional intelligence, you had taken to sitting in your courtyards and playing your guitar. And could you talk about what occurs there?
Exactly. Just a slight correction. I sit on my deck that overlooks.
Oh, the deck. Oh, sorry. I didn't quite.
And we're kind of a U shape. There's a row of probably 25 townhomes that make up most of the loop, and then there's a number of probably 6 or 7 homes facing us. So there's a number of homes on my side of our subdivision. And so I've made a point to go out and play music with the thought in mind to project to the universe a positive aspect of what I'm trying to do with my life. And I welcome, and I consciously think I welcome response from the universe. And it's been a really magnificent experience for me. And I would recommend anyone that whatever you feel passionately about, don't do it inside exclusively. Go outside and let the universe recognize your work, and you will be greatly rewarded.
So what exactly happens?
I'll go outside and I'll play Bach or Ravel or my own pieces or jazz or just a number of different works, and I project out into the universe, as I've said. And what happened, this was this time last year, actually started in early summer, and I would walk my dog, or I'd play, and then I really wouldn't be thinking about it, and I would walk my dog back in to the courtyard directly over this is the first event that happened here. Directly over our townhouse, there's any number of that they could have, if it was just by chance, they could have come to. But they were directly, it was, Dr. Weber, it was a beautiful purple elongated dome, almost a bell shape, that was directly over our townhouse. And a third of the way up, it had a pink rotating ring that was spinning.
Hmm.
And it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. And I couldn't believe it. And it just moved like that. And I ran in to get my fiance, and she came out and she saw it and she witnessed it with me. And it was just absolutely a beautiful event. And it lasted probably minutes or more. And it just sat there. And during that same time when I came in, all the alarms in the house were going off on our refrigerator, the microwave. I had a power strip on my musical equipment. It was smoking. So it obviously did something where it did a scan of our property. And she came out, I made sure everything was okay. And she came out and we watched it. And it just sat over our townhome. And it just slowly walked away. Walked, but I mean, it just slowly moved. I had my cell phone and I was trying to get a picture of it, and it was just completely black. And as soon as it crossed the tree line, my camera popped back up. And so I was not able to record it, but I did have a witness, and it was a very moving experience. There was no feeling of anything but elation on my part. I just thought it was a beautiful experience, and it was just a very kind thing that they did, and I was very thankful for that.
Now, you've also had experiences where you were able to capture things on the camera.
Yeah, well, the next experience was, I guess, about a month and a half later, and again, I was taking. That was evening. That was just before dusk. The second event was early in the morning, and I had just taken my dog out, and when I came right back in, there were 4 UFOs in a row, 2 sets of 2, about 200 feet up in the air, just sitting there, perfectly still. There was a red one on the end, and then 3 gray ones, and they were just spinning, just sitting right there. And I went to go get my camera because I bought a Canon because I really want to capture this. And when I came out at that time, they were gone, and that was a very short experience. And then 3 days after my birthday, September the 28th, this was about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I don't live out in the country. This is a very suburban area, and no one else saw it. I mean, it seemed to me like they were very selective on when they showed themselves so that I alone would see it. I mean, that was the impression that I got, is that they were making a point to say to me that we heard you, we appreciate what you do, and here we are. Now, this on the September 28th, I came. This was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and it was hard for me to believe, actually, but it was a large plus shape. This is all in my courtyard. I mean, so if I were facing one direction and my townhouse is to the left, the first one would have been right there. I wouldn't have to have even moved. The second, the 4 were directly in front of me, and then the second was just to my right. And this was, I can only describe it as the size of an office building, literally.
Wow.
It was a plus shape, and it was burnished metal, and I could see the sun reflecting off one of the arms of the plus, and directly next to it was an equal-sized structure that was in the shape of a crescent. They weren't connected, but it was sitting at a 45-degree angle, and it was hard for me to put my head around that. And so I ran in again to get Karen, and I came back out, and by that time it had worked its way over. And before I went in, though, I focused it on my camera, and I took a picture, and I could see it. And I sent you the MUFON report, and I think I showed a picture. The only thing that showed was this tiny dot on the screen, and that was all that I was able to get. I ran in to get her and get my camera again, and I came back out, and she saw it as it was crossing the line of townhouse, the roof line. And my camera, I was fumbling with it, and in my mind, very clearly, it said, "Don't bother getting a picture. We will give you something that you can take a picture of." And that was, and so, you would think surely you would run around in front of the condo and get a picture of what was going by, but it was just something that um, I just felt like they didn't want me to take the picture. And then
Right.
on October 10th, which was less than 2 weeks later, in that same spot, exactly the same spot where I saw the two large structures, was that perfect heart-shaped cloud.
The heart-shaped cloud, which you sent a photo of, which we're going to put in the video actually,
Yeah, it
so
was
that
just
people
such,
can see that.
such a perfectly created thing that, my father he was a mathematician. He's an aerospace engineer, and he would say when you have those two things that cross, that statistically that's fairly impossible to have that kind of a structure, and then to have a cloud that is a perfect heart shape to appear in the same spot. You could wait 2 or 3 lifetimes for something like that to happen.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. Do you
And
think that that there was a symbology there?
I do.
What are some of the thoughts that that come to you?
They told me, and I was very thankful, very grateful for that.
Sorry, your
Oh,
voice.
sorry. I was very grateful and thankful for them to come back, and I just thought it was a very beautiful thing for them to do for me. I mean, I've never heard of manipulating clouds into shapes before.
Uh-huh. One of the theories that, or kind of models or hypotheses that we developed back in the early days of exopolitics in 1973 was a thing called the context communication theory of extraterrestrial communication, and that is sort of like um, the early psychological theory of dreams. That dreams
Um,
are part of your subconscious that are psychologically that's communicating to you in terms of symbols.
yeah,
And in terms of the context communication theory, it's that the intelligence behind the UFOs, and in this case, a heart-shaped cloud would be a UFO in a way, uh,
mhm,
that the intelligence is one species that's communicating to another, ourselves, in terms of symbols. It's a context. It's taking symbols and putting it in the context. And heart is love. So at
right,
first, it's this kind of cross shape. I know there's another sort of photo that you've set that looks like what you saw, and
right.
then sort of the universal symbol of love. If you put those together, is there any kind of a connection that you see there? Or?
Right. Well, and the plus shape and the crescent shape. I mean, that is so iconically driven throughout,
Right.
human experience that I imagine that's probably been seen thousands of years ago, and that was
Yeah.
probably as important to them as it is to me today. I
Yeah.
mean,
So it's the whole notion of Christianity, Islam is
exactly,
one, and not separation, and then the heart is love. So not war, but love, right?
exactly,
Isn't that
exactly.
it? And it's
That
very simple.
that just it flooded over me. Dr. River. It just was one of the most incredible experiences, and yeah, I welcome any further interaction that they want to have with me. And
Yeah.
I've had a few small incidents since. A friend of mine is a World War II B-24 pilot, and I take he and his wife around a good bit, and she was actually in the hospital, and I was
Oh,
driving him to ICU. She'd broken her hip, and when I was driving, this beautiful football shaped was probably 3 or 4 feet, um, and, and it was a perfect football shape, and it
Huh.
was more like a brass color, and it just popped right over the top of a hotel and went over the highway when we were pulling off, and I was taken into the ICU. But I mean, to me, it was just a short thing, but it was a very moving experience too. I mean, it was amazing. When I was 14 years old, my sister and I were pulling into our neighborhood, and this golden globe. It was big. It was probably 20 feet in diameter, solid gold that moved right across. We had actually a baseball field in our neighborhood, and it was over that, and then it moved over the road. And many years ago, I was teaching guitar at a friend of mine's music shop, and he said that he saw around that same time frame, with hundreds of other people, this same golden orb that manifested over there too. So I've seen them a number of times. On my birthday this last year, I said, "Would you please show me something on my birthday? I really appreciate that." And so I was out at night, and there was a little light. It wasn't really a big thing, but it started, it lit up, it went about 20 degrees across the sky and went out. And thank you. That was awesome. That's just a little thing, but it was very cool. Have you had experiences like that yourself? Or?
Well, I've had group experiences, yes. Uh, uh, Various times, either here in Vancouver,
Mm-hmm.
a number of us with a UFO expert here by the name of John Kelly, and my wife Jerry, and a friend of ours, Mariana Ridwald, who's a world famous Buddhist painter. She's
Uh,
painted portraits of the Dalai Lama and of all sorts of Buddhist themes. We've gone out here to the beach here, right here in Vancouver, kind of the park, and we just sit here and meditate and chant, and all of a sudden the craft will come in interdimensionally and start to communicate with our thoughts and stuff. And then, of course, I've done it with down at Mount Adams, Washington, at the Iseti Ranch. Mount Adams is an extinct volcano, and Nassim Haramein says that the volcanoes are like the interdimensional portals for the Earth. So that's where a lot of interdimensional craft can come in from the next dimensions over and come into our time-space hologram. So we've been in circles there in front of Mount Adams. We make a big circle, and I can recall being in one facing Mount Adams that was about maybe 3 miles away,
mm-hmm.
and we're in a big circle, and all of a sudden I look over to my left, and there was a craft that we determined later was about half a kilometer wide, and then it came over and came directly between my vision and Mount Adams, and then telepathically it said, "Well, you might have to come up into the craft tonight."
I've missed that last part.
It says, "Well, you might have to come up into the craft tonight." And I was like, "Oh," and so we just stood there all meditated, and then slowly the craft kind of went away. And after it, I went up to the hall and I began asking different people, and they all heard that voice with that same thing. So either we were teleported into up into the craft, in that instant time thing where you don't remember, or it decided not to. I don't know. So anyway, that was our kind of experience there. But you mentioned about the UFO reports that you had filed with MUFON. Now, you're in Atlanta, Georgia, and you have a very famous friend who is also has a connection to peace, who lives in the Georgia area, who you've talked to about UFOs. Could you tell us a bit about that?
I lost you. Are you talking about President Carter? Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah.
I've I had a gig many years ago, and they wouldn't tell me who I was playing for, and I went to the gig, and the Secret Service came right up to my face, and they were checking me out, and their dogs were smelling almost. I said, "Wow, something's up here." And I played. It was for 2,000 dignitaries from South America: President Carter, Gerald Ford, Al Gore, Ted Turner. There was just everybody in the world was there. And I had my music, my guitar set up, and my equipment, and I was playing through the sound system, and it sounded fantastic before everybody got there. And they started filing in, and somebody turned me all the way down, and I was playing a piece by Haragata. It's Capriccio Arby. It's a very beautiful romantic piece, and I finished playing. I didn't think anybody was even listening because I couldn't hear anything. And I looked down, there were two sets of feet in front of me, and it was President and Mrs. Carter.
Oh.
And they said, "We love that piece. Andres Segovia played that for us." And
wow.
And do you know Recuerdos del Alhambra, which is just a very classic piece that we all play? Yeah, sure. Wait a minute, just give me 1 second. He went up on stage and said, "I want everybody to stop what they're doing and listen to this fantastic music. I want them turned up, and I want them turned up right now." So we've been donating. He's actually been donating guitars for the Carter Center winter auction. And so he was in Toledo, Spain. We all went, and so he could sign the labels, so we could have these guitars that they've been auctioned off for a lot of money over the years. And we had dinner in Toledo, and he was sitting right next to me for 2 or 3 hours. I've played for him a number of times in his family personally, but this was, over dinner, and we were talking, and I didn't ask. The person next to me asked him about UFOs, and he was a little reticent to talk about it. But then I told him about the one that at that time, the only one I really had experience was the one with my sister in my neighborhood. And I told him what I saw, and then he told me, he said, "Well, we had a meeting in South Georgia with a number of farmers, and we were outside, and I saw this light that moved very erratically. I couldn't explain it. I had no idea what it was. I can't tell you to this day what it was. And as far as I could tell, it was a UFO." And he was very open with me about my experience and wasn't ridiculing in any way. And so there was no groundbreaking information there, but it was, he acknowledged he did see something, and he was very kind about it.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
Exactly. So so you have firsthand verification, and that's what he put in his 1973 filing, UFO filing of the 1969 UFO sighting that he had with the other members of the Leary, Georgia, club that he was attending. I think it's the Rotary Club or something.
Okay. Yeah.
The Lions Club, I think it was. Yeah, one of those clubs.
Yeah. But it was just an amazing thing to just speak with him about something that, generally is sort of a taboo subject. But, he was very open about it. And I wish we could have more of that, so we could. What are your thoughts on disclosure of this vital area? humanity's future.
Well, it's funny that you should ask. I mean, um, I took his filing of that report in 1973 very seriously. I was um, at that time. I had just been general counsel of the Environmental Protection Administration of the city of New York, and in the year that he filed that, I wrote my first book on the ET phenomenon, and that's where I published the context communication theory of extraterrestrial communication that I just brought up earlier about, oh, they're trying to communicate something with the cross and the crescent and the heart. It's a communication. It's saying peace, peace, love,
Okay.
and and when President Carter, who was running against Gerald Ford in the 1976 campaign, he declared that if he was going to if he was elected, he would open the secret UFO and ET files. That became like, you know, a declaration for a whole generation of us that were interested in that at that time. So
I think Bush Senior, wasn't he the head of CIA and kind of shut that down, or am I?
yeah, you know, we're talking about almost two different factions of the U.S. and President Carter, you know, almost the dark and the light.
Yeah.
And President Carter really represented the light in a certain way, and still does.
Well, I'll tell you, I played for him at his church. I told him about my mother, who had stage 4 breast cancer at the time. They'd given her 6 months to live. I have the letter that said he and everyone, all of his congregation will
Yeah,
pray for my mother, and that meant a lot. And she lived for another 7.5 years.
yeah,
And so, I think all of that good, the good intent and living a good life, I think that makes a big difference. I mean,
yeah,
what your mind can create, I think, is limitless, really.
yeah. And no, I actually headed up a Stanford Research Institute project during the Carter. It's called the Carter White House Extraterrestrial Study, which I received White House staff approval on. It was subsequently shut down by the Department of Defense, which threatened to pull all of the DoD funding from Stanford Research Institute if it went forward. And then I met up again with the Carter administration in Mexico City as a journalist, where Jody, who was the press secretary for Jimmy Carter, gave me press credentials to cover his visit down with the president of Mexico. And so I've followed President Carter for quite a while as a journalist and as an exopolitical reporter and analyst. So what thinking back on all of these experiences and your closeness to President Carter, what are your thoughts and your reflections? Because I mean, this video is going to be seen by a number of people at a crucial time, by people who are interested in what the extraterrestrials have to say, almost as a message of peace. What are your thoughts?
I really think we're reaching such a critical point on this planet with resources that are running out, for environment that is really out of control. Just as an aside, speaking of my father again, he was an aerospace engineer. He worked at Lockheed,
Yeah.
I was very young. I was probably 7 years old, and he gave me a tour of the plant in Marietta. And there was this huge black curtain. I was small, so it may not have been as huge as I think, but it was just a gigantic black curtain was placed up uh, in the factory floor.
Hmm.
One of my dad's colleagues, he came up, we walked up to him, and he said, "This is skunk works. You want to see what we do?" And
Hmm.
he picked the black curtain up, and I went to look under it, and he dropped it real fast and laughed. And I've asked my father what they were working on behind there, and he was he was more into stress. He redid the C5 wings when they cracked. He headed that
Yeah.
project. But it seems to me we've got so much more technology that they're not willing to release to the public, and I think they've had it for a long time. And I think we're burning candles at both ends, and something needs to give.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. Apparently, I've read reports that some of the extraterrestrial factions are saying that part of their treaties were that they gave some of that technology to the U.S. on the condition that it would be made public, and so this is a violation of treaties.
Uh,
So anyway, uh, well, are are there any other issues that you think you would like to share with us at this time?
well, yeah, I do have. There's so much that the information where the ETs are evil, and you should be afraid of them. And it's a horrible thing, and all of these abductions. And the only thing I've got a very kind experience. I had a very respectful experience, and they showed nothing but kindness and love to me. And I think it's important for everyone to realize that I'm not sure why people feel it's important to demonize this experience because it's anything but that. What is your thought on the dichotomy of the impressions of ET?
Well, that's a key question, and there are all sorts of components to it. One of the components, of course, is individual experience.
Mm-hmm.
Where some people see things and they have very scary experiences where it's not necessarily scary. It's just that a reptilian is scary, whereas the reptilian inherently is not evil. He's just scary to that particular person. But there's a lot of of knowledge and information that we're now slowly becoming aware of, that our planet has been sort of cosmically targeted, let's put it that way, for many years, perhaps as long as a million years, 500,000 years, by various forces, spiritually, at the at the galactic level, uh, in terms of exopolitical kind of Star Wars factions, where it's been kind of a turf war, and so that there have been different factions of extraterrestrials that have tried to take over our planet, either to convert it from a human planet to, say, a reptilian planet. Not that all reptilians are bad, but just this one particular faction, or that have tried to impose their own, uh, um, regimen on the planet, or that have uh, uh, wanted to exploit it for its gold or its water or its mineral resources and enslaved us. So there's a whole unknown or as yet unrecognized aspect in our official history that we are now starting to know at the out of the top secret level is those of us in the exopolitical fields can research and publish it, and we can make it public. So, bottom line, good and evil, positive and negative, seem to be part of the design criterion of this universe, and it's part of what comes along with free will. And it looks like about 1,000,000 years ago or so, we had a choice to go for evil in this sector of the galaxy. And, therefrom came the Star Wars myths, therefore came the Lucifer, Satan, loss of paradise stuff, good versus evil. And we're still fighting that now, where people are, there's the evil side here, there's a good side here, and it's just still a virtual experience in the sense that we're all kind of material avatars. You're John, and I'm Alfred the Avatar, and we're incarnating souls. We're souls that are kind of having this for an experience in soul development. So it's kind of a 4D play that we're in, complex play.
Okay.
So that's my 2 cents.
Well, and I think what I can bring to the picture is that music is there's a frequency that in a plane that your mind is on when you're playing music. I don't think they're terribly impressed probably with our politics or with maybe even some of our scientific achievements. But I think when your mind is on the plane where you're performing music and it's an altered state that you are maintaining for no other purpose than to create beauty. And I think that resonates, and I think it projects far into the universe, and that's why I think I think that they came to to acknowledge that.
Oh, that is absolutely wonderful. What we're going to do when we publish this, we'll put links to your music in the article. Mm-hmm. We can't put the music on YouTube because they're awfully picky, and they get very they get very upset, and so. But what we'll do is we'll put it in the article so that people can go and listen to your music and see.
I do have a question for you.
Sure.
When you say that they've kind of boycotted the Earth, or we're on a
quarantine, I would say.
Quarantine, yeah.
Quarantine.
And how did that happen? How is that maintained? There's obviously a breach when somebody decides that they want to come in.
These are you've asked. This is another key question that you've asked, and there are multiple levels to it. And as far as I can tell, there are at least 3 different levels of intrusion and separation from the universe that are the rest of multidimensional society in the universe and the multiverse that we've had over the last 1,000,000 years. The first level is what I would call a spiritual quarantine at the level of the spiritual governance. And that is that this is apart from things like the regional galactic governance, like the Federation of Planets. But this is more at the level of angelic hierarchies, whereby at the level of the governance of souls, to make sure that this time-space hologram where souls incarnate doesn't get too out of hand. They don't want to get too out of hand. And so there is an angelic hierarchy and spiritual entities and even souls that are deployed to as a governance. And in this sector, there because it's a free will universe, there was a rebellion of the spiritual government, yet led by several high-ranking angelic figures that have the historical name of Lucifer and Satan and others. And these have been encoded in the historical texts in the Old Testament and New Testament. You know, as Lucifer, Satan, Adam, and Eve, and the loss of paradise. The loss of paradise, being thrown out of paradise, Adam and Eve, that's a symbolic story of the Lucifer rebellion, where Lucifer and Satan tempted Eve, the human, and that's sort of a symbolic thing of how humanity was quarantined and thrown out of paradise, i.e., the spiritual circuits to the rest of the universe. And the multiverse was shut down because the rebelling spiritual governance here was able to take over these sort of life-bearing planets and all of the angels that were taking over them. And for the last million years, that's been acting itself out. And it's just about over. The quarantine is just about lifting. And from what I understand, the chief architects of it, Lucifer and Satan, have been tried and have been extinguished at the soul level. So it's bad news for the Satanists on Earth, because you have large number of satanic organizations and entities and governments, but they don't even know that their principles no longer exist. That's why all the progressive kind of light workers on the planet are doing so well, because there's no more, and we're kind of in a catch-up time while the dark forces kind of figure this one out.
It's great to know.
Yeah.
I mean, and for me personally, there was no challenge to my belief system when I saw, these visitors that came. I mean, it just gave me a feeling of oneness with the universe more than anything else.
Yeah.
Another interesting thing happened during the same time frame. This was last summer. Karen, my fiancée, she's a yogist. She does yoga, and she's been to Machu Picchu and been with the Dalai Lama. And she was she'd spent an entire day with her yogi, and she came home and she took a bath. She was laying in bed. The lights were off. I was going to go take a bath myself. She was laying in bed, and this perfectly round powder blue circle appeared on her forehead. And it lasted about 5 seconds, and then it disappeared. And I told her about it, and it was, to me, it was just another example of, another dimension that we don't see, that just kind of appeared and validated itself. And to me, that was, and it's interesting. The months following that have been kind of a challenging time, just in general. I mean, I question a lot of, what I want to do with my future, and it's just really opened up a lot of questions that I have about the meaning of life, what I want to have a fulfilled life, and it's just been a very important thing that's happened. And I thank you for giving me the time to share my experience, Alfred. Thank you so much.
Well, we're all learning from you because you have brought us an important message from the multi-dimensionals, which is it's all about love. It's not about conflict.
Exactly. Yeah. And if there's one thing that I could get across to your viewers is your listeners, and would be whatever you do. If you make shoes, if you throw pots, if you write novels, or whatever that moves you, don't just do it inside. Go and outside and project your creative energy to the universe and see what happens. And I think you'll get a lot of response. You'll see people going, "Wow, that really works," and it's a wonderful thing. It's an important thing to do.
Excellent, excellent. Do you have any kind of thoughts that you'd like to leave our viewers with, or us with?
I think it's important to realize that we can get tied up in just the day-to-day grind of going to work and making sure we don't get hit in our cars and just try to pay our bills. But life is a lot more than that. It can be very fulfilling. It can take you to places that you'll never really comprehend if you're true to yourself and you're open to experiences. And that's what I would hope people would take away from this is, to have faith in yourself. When people say no to you, that just gives you extra ammunition to go and do what you want to do. And I've always done that. And I'm very happy to say that it's served me pretty well.
Well, thank you for being with us and for bringing this message. One of the most powerful insights that you shared, I think, in all of this time with us, and that is that the multidimensional with whom you shared really appreciate our music. I thought that's such an amazing insight.
I think they appreciate us. I think there's a connection to, I imagine, and this is just my own personal thought, I think we must be fascinating to them in many ways. I'm sure we're very similar in some ways and very different. And when they see that, we're not all here to fight or to try to, take over the world or destroy things, but just, to sit quietly and create something that is nothing beyond the act of creating beauty. I would love to play music with them sometime. I get that feeling many times that that's going to happen.
Wonderful.
I would look forward to that very much.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for being with us, and I look forward to your joining us in the future as all of this develops. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Alfred. I look forward to meeting you one fine day.
Good enough. Likewise.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, John. Take care. Good night.